So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pippa Green. I'm the Ombudsman. I'm joined by a panel, an adjudication panel of Joe Tlolwe and Peter Mann, who will help in this adjudication. But the complaint that this arises out of is from an article in the Daily Maverick, headlined "Confidential NPA Report Exposes Senior Officials Who Lied About Johan Booysen, Yet They Are Still Employed." The author of the article is Jacques Pauw. So thank you again for joining us.
What we need from you is a summary of all your complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Tlolwe, for this. In clause 1, I said I'm lodging a complaint to the following parts of the article. A. The evidence of Danikas was crucial to the state's case. He's a Greek businessman and was a police reservist in Durban who worked with the Katomani unit. Booysen suspended him in 2008 for bringing police management into disrepute. He left the country overnight after allegedly stealing $300,000 from his business partner. What we have here is an introduction where, unfortunately, the writer of those so-called news is preparing his readers on an information which it's actually false and biased. There's no balance here. If you put those together, you have a Greek businessman who I'm dodgy because I let stole money from a business partner, and that I was suspended from the force and I ran away to Greece. That is the very first image that comes out on a reader's view. That is false. There was no evidence produced by Maverick or Jacques Pauw to prove that I ever stole any money. I don't know where I came from. Well, I have my suspicions. I challenged Jacques Pauw to produce evidence that there is a judgment or there is a court case that I have been convicted of stealing €300,000. My second complaint is a clause following an expose about the Cato Manor death squad in the Sunday Times in December 2011. The story was later withdrawn. And the arrest of Booysen and his men, Danikas, Turner, Booysen and his men. This is factually inaccurate. I did not turn on Booysen and his men in 2011. As a whistleblower, while I was serving under the command of Johan Booysen and Katomani unit, I witnessed certain atrocities committed. I've tried in South Africa to approach Johan Booysen. I've tried to approach a list of other people that I felt close to and safe. That failed. As a result, I felt threatened. There were incidents happening in South Africa that made me feel that my life was in danger, and subsequently to that, I end up leaving the country in fear of my life. So, to state that Danikas, Turner, Booysen and his men after 2011, it's false. See, in a fraud effort to re-prosecute Booysen, Abraham sent Maiman, another advocate, to Greece in January 2016 to consult with Danikas. They returned empty-handed, but, again, with an unsigned statement. So, now, this is false. The National Prosecution Authority came to Greece in 2016 to discuss, in the presence of my attorneys, the possibility of me testifying in court via video link and handed evidence on a case in South Africa. At the time, we agreed, I was happy to give evidence, and I handed over certain evidence to the investigation team. On that basis, an MLA mutual legal agreement was prepared, sent to Greece for me to sign. So I thought this is very inaccurate when the journalist states that they returned empty-handed with an unsigned statement. So we agreed, they went back to South Africa, they prepared the mutual legal agreement, and it was sent to Greece via the appropriate channels. Danikas had only signed a Greek version of his affidavit under the mutual legal assistance agreement between Greece and South Africa some 8 months after Abraham's re-prosecuted Booysen. He later refused to sign the English version because it contained mistakes. That is a blatant lie. That never happened. I have never refused to sign an English version. There are no evidence produced by the journalist to that extent. I produced emails proving that I was never asked to sign an English version. He says that I refused to sign an English version because it contained mistakes. That's a blatant lie. It never happened. Now, had I been asked for my version of story, I would have told Jacques Pauw that this is what happened, there's my evidence, and the story will reflect a more balanced news story. The de Kock panel says the state's reliance on Danikas' evidence is open quote puzzling, close quote, and it failed to understand why the state never translated the Greek version into English. I cannot answer for the de Kock report and the people behind it because, again, none of them contact me to interview me. I mean, they all talk about my name, Aris Danikas, but none of them has ever reached through my attorneys, through the appropriate channels, or through me to shine a light of what happened because I was directly involved with the prosecutors. On F, it has also emerged now that Danikas was never on the state witness list and Myanmar did not intend calling him. Pretoria attorney Julian Knight, acting for Danikas, said in a February 2015 affidavit that he had received an email from Myanmar in early 2015 stating that he will not be calling Danikas as a witness. The problem I have here is, Madam Chair, is that the journalist taking out of context information, puts it together in order to make his own news, which is inaccurate. Now, that letter was issued prior to 2016. It had nothing with the visit of the National Prosecution Authority in Greece in 2016, where for the very first time I agreed to sign a mutual legal agreement statement and to hand in officially evidence. So whatever transpired before that has nothing to do with the chain of events. By saying that Myanmar did not intend calling him, it's a blatant lie. Mr. Myanmar did not intend calling me to go back to South Africa to testify because I was fearing of my own safety. We had agreed by the attorneys and it was proposed by the NPA that I will testify by secure location in Europe, command post they call it, via video link. That was the arrangement. I have produced evidence to that. I have emails which I have produced to the panel that actually proves what I'm saying. He will not be calling Danikas as a witness. It's another problem I have. I have voice recordings and I have emails, official emails from the National Prosecution Authority stating that they intended to call me as a witness. Had Jacques Pauw came to me and asked me, I would give him that information. So this is where I call this to be unfair. It's not a balanced article and I feel it has caused great damage to my character. I consider it a targeted character assassination. It has happened in the past. It's a pattern repeated by not other than Johan Booysen, who is directly involved to damage my reputation. I'm not in South Africa to physically harm me. I'm in Greece, so it is a recorded academic study that a whistleblower that cannot be physically harmed, he will be character assassinated by media. And this is what I believe has happened right now with the South African media. I was never given the opportunity to respond. And the fact that Jacques Pauw states that he tried to contact me, it's a blatant lie. I was never contacted and I believe that the intent was malicious not to contact me, and I have given the panel a lot of evidence to that extent. One last point. I'd like to make the point that the burden of proof lies with telling Maverick and Jacques Pauw to show evidence that the report was factual. They failed to do so.
Thank you. I think what is very important here, and I'm going to ask you to stay with me for a few minutes, is that we have to give some background this event taking place. We have to give some background to who Mr. Danikas is. And I think it's very important for the panel to understand that this is a man who greatly assisted the state capture project in getting rid of KwaZulu-Natal Hawks Head General Johan Booysen, in order to protect cronies and business associates.
Can I interrupt, Madam?
Madam, I object. Sorry, carry.
Can I interrupt?
Now,
Madam Chair, we are looking at a specific article, not a general picture of who Danikas is, who Booysen is, who Jacques is. We need to get focus on the article itself.
And Madam President, I may say that Jacques doesn't know of him, he's never spoken to me. How can he speak about a background about me if he's never spoken to me and interviewed me?
Mr. Danikas.
Find out the Koch report, paragraph 120 and paragraph 120.1. It opens a grey area where it states why the indictment wasn't extended to include my evidence introduced. So there are questions that the Koch asks which they were never mentioned on Jacques Pauw's article by the Maverick.
I have paragraph 120 in front of me, and this is what it says. It says the decision of the prosecution to call Danikas simply to testify about a similar modus operandi based on similar fact evidence is at most puzzling. It says Abrahams in his answering affidavit, I presume that Sean Abrahams at paragraph 267.2 says that the practices described by this, quote, eyewitness who was an accepted part of Cato Manor SVC prior to the indictment period bears a distinct similarity to what is described in the indictment, and that similar fact evidence is admissible under POCA. And then 120.1, this witness relates an incident in 2001 when the police killed a suspect and that he personally believed the person was not armed. Booysen came afterwards and also congratulated members. What is the point you're making with that, Mr.
Sorry, I haven't finished. I'm sorry, I haven't finished. Basically, my own interpretation is that wondering why the indictment wasn't extended to include my evidence, my submission.
Sorry to interrupt, it does go on to say that. So it says the panel says, had there been an incident of this nature, it would have been easy to expand the life and continuity of the criminal enterprise. I think that's what Mr.
And charge Booysen and the police office as it appears to be the same persons who are now being charged for participation in a racketeering enterprise.
Is why didn't you call Julian Knight, my ex-attorney in South Africa, to establish a way of communicating with me? Also, why didn't he contact Natalie Megas, the USA attorney who wrote an article about me?
As I said, I attempted to find your telephone number from Booysen, who I thought would have it. I attempted to find you on Facebook, I attempted to find you on Twitter, and I attempted to find you on LinkedIn. Now, if you type your name, Aris Danikas, into Google, there is absolutely no contact detail for you. Absolutely nothing.
That didn't answer my question. Why didn't you call Julian Knight, who was a legal representative of mine, directly involved with the NPA? It's public record. I'm not a journalist, but I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but I mean, it's a logical step.
I thought I took reasonable steps to get hold of you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's let the panel decide about this. Thank you for your reply to that.
All right. Joe, Peter, do you have questions at this point?
Yes, I think I've got some questions for Mr. Pauw. Is it true, Jacques, that your story was based on information from General Booysen?
No, the story was mainly based on the Koch report.
Right.
But obviously, I mean, I had the Koch report, and the basis of the story is the findings of the Koch report. Because remember, the Koch report was used by NDPP Shamila Batoy to withdraw all the charges against Booysen and all his men.
The specific item I'm looking at is the 300,000.
That came from General Booysen.
Entirely.
Yeah, well, not entirely, because it's been published. It's been published before. This is not the first time it's been published.
The veracity of the other publications on that particular issue, or was it based on your respect for General Booysen?
Well, it was based on my conversation with General Booysen, and I regard General Booysen as a very authoritative witness. I mean, he's had a police record of a police career of 40 years. He's one of the highest decorated policemen in the history. He's got an unblemished record. He's testified before the State Capture Commission and the Mokoro panel. His evidence has been accepted. It's unchallenged at the Zondo Commission, at the State Capture Commission. So I regard him as a very credible witness. And this is not hearsay evidence. This is evidence after he personally spoke to the alleged victim.
In our craft, we are taught to question every statement that is put before us. You don't accept it because there is an authority behind it. You test its veracity. Did you test the story that the Danikas took somebody's 300,000 rand?
Yes, I questioned General Booysen in length about it. How did he know it? How is he sure that it is true? I questioned him about it, as I would have questioned
anyone.
But you
relied on one witness, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
But he was prepared to go under oath to make the statement.
My other question would be related to the statement that you couldn't get Danikas in any way. You tried LinkedIn, you tried Google. Well, this is the only method that you could use to trace somebody in this world.
Yeah, I mean that was the obvious tools to use. I mean, one must also remember that you're under certain pressure. The story must go out. There's competition between news organizations and the media and newspapers and whatever.
People's reputations are involved, so you've got to be sure about every sentence you write, every word you write. You must be able to corroborate it. Isn't that the basic of our craft?
I'm not sure that is exactly how newspapers or the news media always work. I mean, Johan Booysen knows very well what it means to go under oath, to state something under oath, and he was prepared to do it.
Okay, so I just want to ask a follow-up to some of Joe's questions as well. You said that the story had been published, this 300,000 rand story had been published elsewhere.
Yes.
And in your complaint, in your response to the complaint, you only mentioned that it had been published in General Booysen's book.
Yes.
Has it been published elsewhere to your knowledge?
I'm actually not sure. I know it was published in Johan Booysen's book. I don't know if it was published anywhere else.
I think you'll agree then that means the fact that General Booysen published it in his book. I'm not disputing the truth or otherwise of it, but it doesn't equal that it's been widely published by other news media.
No, I never said it. I never said it was widely published by other news media. I just said it had been.
This allegation had been widely published, and I'm asking you what the definition of widely published is. Because if it was only published in General Booysen's book, and then you took it from General Booysen, you're using the same source.
Yes.
So you have no veracity. It's not like you had independent veracity or independent,
right.
Because other news media published it to know that story was true.
I'm not sure whether it had been published by other media.
I'm a bit confused about something that you said. In your response to his complaint, you seem to say that you had difficulty tracking him through LinkedIn. Was there some confusion about his name, or is this the name that you couldn't find him under?
No, I didn't know he was using that LinkedIn name. I mean, I'm sure if I've typed that name into Google, I would have found it. But he uses a different name, and I don't know whether it's because of the translation from Greek into English or whatever. But you can't find his LinkedIn account by typing Aris Danikas LinkedIn into Google. You don't find it. I mean, there's lists of Danikases coming up.
The reason I'm hacking on about this, and I'm sorry, is that I did exactly that, and I think some of my fellow panelists did. And I found him within 2 minutes.
Not if you type Aris Danikas into Google. I've done that.
Aris Danikas LinkedIn into Google and found him in 2 minutes. One of the things that this turns on is section 1.8 of the press code. I'm sure that you're aware of the 1.8 of the press code. We should seek, if practicable, the views of the subject of critical reportage in advance of publication, except when they might be prevented from reporting or evidence destroyed or sources intimidated. Such a subject should be afforded reasonable time to respond. If unable to obtain comment, this shall be stated.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
You know, you didn't say anywhere in your report that you weren't able to get hold of it.
No, I did not. No, I did not.
Do you think that you, as a reporter, tried hard enough in terms of section 1.8? He's clearly the subject of critical reporting. Did you try hard enough to get hold of this guy, or did you just simply write what you wanted to about it?
No,
without mentioning that you couldn't get hold of him, without giving him a right of reply.
I think I took reasonable steps, but I think I could have tried harder. And I should have said that I couldn't reach him. He wasn't reachable.
What were your reasonable steps? You tried to find him on LinkedIn and you couldn't find him, so you gave up.
No, and I also went to Johan Booysen, who I thought would have his telephone number.
But as he said, so why did you not go to his former attorney, who you quote, who's quoted in the report? You quote him in your response. You knew his name. Why didn't you go to him?
I can't answer that question. General Booysen, I called you at the time I was writing the article for Daily Map to discuss Danikas with you. I, amongst others, asked you for his telephone number. You said you didn't have his telephone number yet. Danikas claims that you made threatening calls to him in 2016 and that you must have had his telephone number.
It's a blatant and egregious lie.
What point are you trying to make with the fact that General Booysen may or may not have called you?
The fact I'm trying to make is Johan Booysen knew my cell number, because as you know, when you call a WhatsApp number, you must have the phone number that you're calling to. So if he had my cell number, that means that Jacques Pauw had the information to contact me for his article. That's all the point I'm trying to make.
How do you think that he got your Greek phone number if your relationship was not good by then?
Oh, there are plenty ways to have leaked my number. I mean, I cannot find a way, but there are plenty ways. Plenty of people in South Africa might have leaked my number. The NPA had my phone number. Maybe police might have my phone number. Johan Booysen has many sources in South Africa. I cannot answer to that.
General Booysen, would you like to give a response to that?
No, I'm not going to respond to that. I've already said, when I was arrested in 2013, I think it was the first time the police confiscated my cell phone. It was never returned to me. It was a police cell phone. So if my photograph came up, that to me tells me that my number must have been on Danikas's phone. Because if my photograph comes up, it must mean that he's got my number on his phone. For my photograph to come up. It looks like you don't understand.
Yes, I do.
Not on WhatsApp. Not on WhatsApp. It's a public profile.
Okay. Let's accept it then. So, the police confiscates my phone in 2013 when I was arrested. I get my own private phone. Subsequent to that, I get arrested again in 2016. They confiscate my phone again. So, I could have had Danikas's number, and his assertion that, and once again, Ari, I don't know how you expect me to believe that. It's 2011, it's 3 years after you left the country.
The phone number 082 63 24 025, is that Johan Booysen's phone number? I repeat the phone number. That is the number you call me on WhatsApp.
General Booysen, could you answer?
Before I answer that question, I'm imploring you as a chairperson to please ask Mr. Danikas to toe the line. He seems to be taking the pace here and interrupting and calling the shots here. That's the clear impression. I'm here to assist this panel to come to a just conclusion.
And if I can come in, Chair, please do not interrupt a person when they're talking, because we cannot run this process properly if everybody interrupts everybody. Stay in your box. You will be given a chance to respond to what things are being said when they do, please. We cannot carry on like that.
Madam Chair, Thank you, and I apologize to the panel, but this is the very first time that I have the opportunity to respond, okay, and to be heard. So excuse my emotions. Nobody's perfect. Now, over and above that, to the point. My first point is that I was never given the opportunity to respond by Jacques, Pauw and Maverick. I think that I have made valid points there, that Jacques Pauw didn't try enough to contact me, or he wasn't very sincere to contact me. My second point is that there is no evidence, no open case since 2008 that I was ever involved on any criminal activity. And to point out also the alleged of 300,000 stealing and all that.
Jacques, I'm going to hand over to you. Could you?
You don't know this information.
And I want to say that the de Kock report certainly amounts to quasi-judicial proceedings. And as such, any quote from the de Kock report, any reportage from the de Kock report should be protected. And it doesn't matter there what Mr. Danikas' comment on the de Kock report is, it is completely irrelevant.
Reply.
Madam Chairman, I don't have faith on that South African media at the moment, and this is why I came to you, to the panel. In response to Jacques Pauw saying that I did not challenge the publication of the book, I have challenged it, I have sent lawyer's letter to Jessica, the author of Johan Booysen's book. Sunday Times had offered, the legal department of Sunday Times offered prior to the publication of the book to reveal my contact information to Jessica. Prior to the publication, I was available to talk because my name is all over the book. And yet they refused, they never contacted me. I have the email, I can send to you.
Jacques, would you be prepared to give Mr. Danikas a right of reply, or to ask your editors to do that?
You know, I can't speak for the Daily Maverick. I don't work for them, and I haven't discussed this with them either. I would think that Mr. Danikas probably doesn't deserve a right of reply. I mean, to give him 2,000 words to say whatever he wants to is not going to work. I think what would be fair is that we can craft paragraphs over which he has control over how we put his comment on, for example, on the 300,000 rand issue. I'm saying once again, but we have to state that it was an allegation that was made in the media before. It was never challenged by Mr. Danikas. It was based on an affidavit from Johan Booysen. But I think the fact that we would give Mr. Danikas some space to give his version of events about what happened around the 300,000 rand and the allegation made by Johan Booysen, I think that would be reasonable.
I would not want Mr. Danikas to pursue what he's been pursuing over the last couple of years and use this panel to do that. I agree with you. Let's stick with the facts, his complaints, point by point, and let the panel take the decisions regarding my evidence that I gave regarding those 3 or 4 points and what Mr. Pauw had said. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I think we're moving into the territory of trying to have this gathering write our ruling in the end.
Yes.
I think we have...
I agree. No, I agree, Joe. I think
Before you go on, can I just interject here from Daily Maverick interview?
Yeah.
I have been in contact with Branko as we've been listening to the proceedings here. He has given undertaking that we would be happy to publish a right of reply from Mr. Danikas.
Madam Chairman, may I say something very quick? John has a sentence that he found on the Gordon, and that's the Gordon judgment that everybody's spoken about, because that will shine a light on that
and
particular...
Thank you all the participants very much for coming. To Mr. Danikas and Mr. Pauw, General Booysen, Gillian, and Fani, who is here as well, Mr. Clark. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate the inputs and I understand some of the emotions. As I said, what we're going to try and do is to see whether the article was fair and balanced and truthful, and to make a ruling on that. And given all the arguments that you've made, we will listen to them.